Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Mark Marex, Director of Index Research and Development with Nasdaq Investment Intelligence, to discuss why the Nasdaq Innovators Completion Cap Index is a research and development powerhouse. Mark, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And these are one of my favorite segments that you put together by showing how companies are spending in R&D and how it's reflective in their performance. Let's take a look at the first chart here and get an overview for the index.
Thanks, Jill. Pleasure to be back as always. And you said it. I mean, when we talk about the Nasdaq 100 here, which we do fairly frequently, we do love to bring up, how innovation-centric the companies in that index are. One of the ways we do that is by measuring R&D expenditures, as well as things like patent filings and exposure to other thematic products that are out there. This index, NCX, which we launched in June, is really kind of a small cap version of the Nasdaq 100, I would say, in some ways. It's equal weighted, not market cap weighted, but it looks at Nasdaq listed companies that have among the most valuable patent portfolios outside of both the Nasdaq 100 and the Nasdaq Next Generation 100. So we've kind of had large cap, mid cap covered for a while. Now we've got a small cap index to deliver that same kind of innovation theme. And when you look at this chart, you can see the NCX as it stacks up against RTY, which is the broad Russell 2000 benchmark of small caps, as well as RUO, which is the Russell 2000 growth. You see a multiple, right? A multiple of the weighted average annual R&D expense by constituent, over $100 million on average. Over the last 12 months spent on R&D across the 200 companies in the NCX, versus only about 40 million for the Russell 2000 and just under 60 million for the Russell 2000 growth. Now, when you look at that as a percentage of revenue, weighted average R&D as a percentage of sales, the disparity is even greater. It's almost 13% of revenue reinvested back into R&D for NCX. That's over 6 times the rate for the Russell 2000 at just over 2%, and about 4 times the rate of reinvestment for the Russell 2000 growth. So you're seeing really a much, much higher intensity, a much greater focus on kind of traditional R&D expenditure when you look at how this stacks up against other small cap benchmarks.
Yeah, and Mark, and they really are focused on disruptive technologies, as we can see on the next chart here, with many of these companies recently filing these patents.
Yeah, I mean, this data set, which comes from an alternative data partner called where they basically are able to bucket for us, across 35 different disruptive technologies that you hear about in the news a lot these days, things like drones, 3D printing, NLP, which is natural language processing, even things like cybersecurity that have kind of developed into their own industry. They're able to map this out for us across almost 20,000 publicly listed companies. So when you consider that there's only 200 companies in the NCX, and all of them are small cap pretty much, maybe with the exception of a couple at the edge there, the fact that you've got 12% of all patent activity by count of patents filed over the last 12 months within the theme of spacecraft and satellites, I think that is just crazy impressive. That's the type of rate that you see more frequently with something like the Nasdaq 100. In terms of patent contribution to global activity among publicly listed companies. Some other big ones that score highly here: speech recognition, drones, 3D printing, human augmentation, all around 4%. And this is a biotech and healthcare heavy index, so we've only got a few of the healthcare related themes mapped out within this list of disruptive tech. If you dig deeper into that, you would see even higher activity within some of those technologies that are specific to healthcare. So all in all, a really, really impressive distribution, not just breadth, but also depth of patent activity within this index of small cap innovators.
And Mark, what if you take a look at exposure by different thematics?
Yeah, so this kind of jumps out at you, right? What I was alluding to earlier is that biotech it is overrepresented here in terms of, versus the other themes that you get. It's 70 of the 200 names, 40% of the index weight. That's sort of, baked into the methodology again, because we're looking at the biggest patent portfolios in terms of their estimated dollar values as a percentage of market cap. And obviously, patents are very, very central to biotech valuations. A lot of companies in that space, especially within small cap, derive pretty much all of their value from their patent holdings, because they're not just pre-earnings, but pre-revenue, right? They're still in the stage of kind of finding a market for their patented, whether it's medicines or other therapeutics. So biotech, obviously the standout here, but you've also got, pretty solid exposure to things like green economy, 5G, semiconductors, AI, big data, robotics, all areas that, again, talking about the innovation suite with NDX and NGX, this kind of paints the picture of a natural extension into small cap with NCX, similar strength across a lot of these really, really relevant themes.
Right. And Mark, to wrap up here, another thing that's impressive is the accelerated growth of the intangible assets of the companies within this index.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just taking, we were earlier talking about patent contribution by counting patents. This takes you into the database of patent valuations, which we use for index construction. And you can see that on aggregate, the companies in this index over the last 10 years or so have grown the total value of their patent portfolios from about 8 billion to 32 billion. That is outpacing the rate of growth for the broader Russell 2000, even though obviously that's a much broader index. You've got 2,000 companies there versus 200 here. The thing I really think is amazing is when you compare the value of the portfolios of patents for these 200 NCX constituents, the 32 billion there as of May 2022, that's 87% of the total value for the Russell 2000. So 1/10 as many companies as small cap using that benchmark, but 87% of the patent value. So again, just another way of reemphasizing, this is an innovation-centric, innovation-weighted, thematic tilted index. It's got a lot of biotech, but it's got a lot of other tech and tech-adjacent sectors represented as well, with R&D and patent activity kind of central to the business model.
All right, Mark, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.